Everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. This is our last one for the year of 2024, and I am so excited to end the year with my friend Kelli, who is a Broadway performer, no big deal or anything, and life coach specifically to performers. So thank you so much for joining me at this time of year, Kelli.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here, Jess. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So we have met throughout this, just for context for listeners, we've met throughout the course of the year and we've spent some time in New York, home of Broadway, home of all the amazing theatre things, as I don't need to tell you that, but everyone else. Um, what I think the first question, and then we can, actually just dive into things better from there. But the first question is, what was it like making your Broadway debut?
Oh
Or
my
what does it feel
goodness.
like being on Broadway?
Well, again, just for some background, I have been dancing my entire life. I started when I was 3 and danced competitively through high school, got my BFA in dance from Fordham University and the Ailey School. So it's been my life for a really long time. When it came time to make my Broadway debut, I had been out of school for, a little bit of time. I had worked professionally on cruise ships and I moved back to the city really feeling inspired, committed, and ready to be on Broadway. Because
Mm.
I think there's like that phase, when you're in uncertainty about, okay, this is something I want to do. Can I do it? Am I good enough? We go through that period. And after I had worked professionally on cruise ships, I just felt so, again, ready to come back with a different, as we call in the coaching world, self concept, a different identity as far as like, no, I'm there. Like, I know I can really do this. And so, from the moment that I really decided, like, you go through auditions and you're kind of like, okay, I'm showing up. But like, from the moment that I really decided I'm going to be on Broadway by the end of the year to when I manifested my Broadway debut, it was less than 6 months, like less than 6 months of actual belief in the goal was when it manifested. And I had been in for the show, The King and I at Lincoln Center, the 2016 revival. I had been in and auditioned before, but when I actually booked the show, it wasn't as a result of like a recent audition or even a callback. It was a direct call to my agents or from my agents telling me that I was making my Broadway debut. So it was really wild and unexpected. And that's part of my belief system in terms of having belief before the result, living into the embodiment of who and what you want to be doing in life, right? So it was magical. Of course, it was magical. I rehearsed for like, I don't know, I guess I must have rehearsed for maybe a week or so as a replacement and then, went into the performances and I was only supposed to be there for 10 shows, but because I was so in my belief system and applying manifestation principles and embodying who I wanted to be, I was like, well, if this worked to manifest my Broadway debut, maybe I could stay a little longer. I got invited to stay another 2 weeks to cover someone else's vacation. And then, of course, I was like, well, if that worked to lengthen my contract once, maybe I can do it again. And I ended up staying for the rest of the run and I closed out the show I did a 6 month contract versus a 10 show contract. So,
Mm.
so much of what we experience in our mind projects into what we can then experience in real life. But it was
Mm.
magical. And I'll just say that one of my favorite memories, because I was very, very, very present during my very first performance, my actual Broadway debut. I just remember looking up at Kelly O'Hara in Hello Young Lovers and she like just made eye contact with me. I was like, I cannot believe this is my life right now.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
it was amazing. Yeah.
Thank you for indulging. Like, I know it started out very like thank you for indulging that theater nerd question of like, tell us just what it was like, because that is something that is an experience that is not local to, you know, like your region, in the sense of many more of us know what the concept of being on Broadway is like, as a concept. You know, we're like, oh, we've heard of that.
Mm.
That must be a big deal. Oh, this. So I love that you were willing to share like a piece of that world of like, again, especially for us theater nerds, a piece of that world in terms of that process and that experience. What I also heard in that I really want, there's two things, two different tangents I want to go down, but we'll pick one for now. But is how you highlight that you led yourself through to this goal and this vision, but also you have the recognition that it didn't start from that moment. You were able to gather up all of your previous experience, and you even began with, well, actually, well, not even, well, actually, well, I started when I was 3. You know, like you immediately gather up all of that previous experience that is so, so relevant, especially in your industry. But I think this is a good lesson for anyone in any industry, of how our experiences, we can utilize them and gather them, and, you know, like recognize how they lead us to what our next step is, or what our next goal is, or what our next vision is, which is why I love this conversation at this time of year too. But I love how you immediately recognize that.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things. I was having this conversation with friends last night, and we were just talking about how even the timing of like, yes, the training or like the professional aspects of it. But when you look back, all of the personal experiences that were happening at that time were also really influential to
Mm,
that moment happening. Right. And, you know, we just get to trust that everything is happening for us
mm,
because of course along the way there was doubt, there was uncertainty, there was fear, there was all of the things. um and like literally at, I manifested my Broadway debut in January of 2016, but I think especially around this time of year it's easy to say, well, I said it was going to happen by the end of the year. It's December 19th, the day that we're
mm,
recording this, right? And it's like, well, I guess it's not happening. And I feel like it's really natural to kind of want to take your foot off the gas. And again, it doesn't mean you can't rest or create space or that kind of a thing, but we can sometimes want to go to the space of discouragement. And I was talking to one of my clients about this yesterday of like, oh gosh, well, I guess I was wrong, or I guess this, or I guess it's not happening. But like in the literal story of manifesting my Broadway debut, I just like continued holding on belief through the end of the year, right? Like New Year's came and went. I was like, I can either think I'm really dumb for quitting my job. Because I did. I quit my job at the time, my restaurant job. I left my restaurant job. I was like, I'm going to be on Broadway. And I
mm,
had that moment of like, okay, was this the worst decision I could have ever made? Or do I want to double down on my belief in myself and what I'm creating? And then it
mm,
was only maybe 7 days. I always forget the actual date, but I think it was literally 7 days into the new year that I got the call. And so, I love the energy of the new year and like the freshness of it. And it's also kind of arbitrary in
mm.
the sense of like time continues and
Yeah.
it's a marker and we can love it and use it for us, not against us.
Oh, I'm in full agreement with this, because I love the energy of the new year. Like for me, it's because in a way, like I know a lot of people work through, like especially service industries, but overall the collective vibe is slow down, and it's like, oh cool, we're all kind of like, I mean, it's summer here, so we don't have our caves to retreat to in the winter, you know, like I'm like, this is far more uncomfortable, but there is this reflection time of, there's a magic in that reflection, and I love that feeling.
Mhm.
And I agree, it is also arbitrary. It is just something, but I like utilizing it. And what it sounds like, and I think you ended up saying was, um, you like, it's not that you're taking the foot off the gas, but it's also like, for me, it's not that you're taking your foot off the gas in your belief. Even
Mm,
like there's this sort of a marriage or this co-working between your belief is still there, even in the doubt, even in the uncertainty, because that's such a human experience and that's very normal and it's okay. But you're sort of holding yourself in that. You're not gaslighting yourself and be like, no, 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 I believe. You're like, okay, yeah, I feel uncertain, but this is still true for what I want. Even as you hold yourself, like, very topically, you hold yourself through this holiday season and whatever that looks like or means, right? Some people it's slowing down, some people it feels hectic as shit, like whatever it is. There's, it it's almost like the outside circumstances matter less because you're just holding yourself through the fluctuations or through the experiences and going, this is still what I want.
yeah,
Mm,
definitely.
I love that. So being on stage, being like a performer, there's a lot of rehearsal. Once the show is live though, like what is, and there's a question I'm getting to around how do you take care of your well-being in this, but once, like, you sort of came in and a show was already happening, so what does the rehearsal look like once the show is already on stage? Like, what's that demand throughout the week, not just the shows itself, and how do you take care of your well-being? Because that's quite like, we us mortals on the other side of the stage, like in the seats, like, romanticize almost like, oh, that must be so amazing, and I believe that it would be, but it doesn't come without hard work. So
Mm.
what does that look like in terms of navigating that with your well-being?
Yeah. So once a show is running, it really depends, but most of the time, you just do your shows in the evening, unless you are part of maybe the choreography team, a dance captain or a co captain, or you're one of the swings or understudies. So if you are part of this, like the swing team or swing nation, as they call it, it's like if you are part of that where you cover multiple roles, there will be understudy rehearsal during the day most weeks. And again, this can change from show to show. I've heard of some companies having like multiple days of rehearsals depending on if they're having new company members join. But then there would be what I experienced as well when I joined the King and I was there's a what they call a put in rehearsal, a put in. And then the ensemble company will come, the understudies will step in and you'll do your kind of full show with all of your costume changes, sort of like a dress rehearsal.
Mm,
Um, but so yeah, usually the swing team will have rehearsals during the week aside from shows. Um, and when you're on a Broadway schedule, the way things are right now, you typically have one day off. So you're working 6 days a week, doing 8 shows per week. And there is a lot of learning when it comes to maintaining your energy and finding the routines that work for you. I mean, I think that my second Broadway show that I did was Anastasia, and that closed in what year was that? 2019, I believe. And so I haven't been in that process since then, like that specific New York Broadway schedule. So it'd be really interesting. And I'm curious for when I step into my next contract of like what the difference will be now that I have many more tools in my
you're
toolkit.
you're different, like,
Yeah, 100%. Right.
yeah.
But I remember back then that I had this thought and this belief of like, okay, I got to protect my energy. I have to, like, I'm doing a lot. And so when I look back, I had a little bit of a limitation around how much freedom and enjoyment I was allowing myself to have in my personal life
Yeah.
because I was so focused
Mm.
on maintaining what I was doing for the show. So, it's interesting because you do have most of your days free and then you do your show in the evening, but you do have to find pockets of rest and maintaining your nutrition and your energy and your spirituality and all of those things. And that looks different for everyone. But yeah, I used to, and I still do as I'm in a period of my career where I'm auditioning and literally just had an audition yesterday, right? Like it's maintenance and it's staying ready to be ready for that next opportunity physically, mentally, spiritually, all of the things.
I love that last bit, especially like staying ready to be ready for the next opportunity.
Mm,
It's to me, it doesn't feel like hypervigilance or anything like that. It feels so honoring to what it is that you want to create in your life. I immediately can see how that approach isn't just for performing. Like it is so useful for anyone, whatever their goal is, it's not this hypervigilance. I've got to, like, it's not this high stress, but it is this, how do I take care of myself so that way I can, like, in a way, like take advantage of the opportunities that come along and be ready to do them. And even if I'm not quite ready, I still feel more capable because I've been holding myself, like, and taking care of these things along the way anyway. Like I always find that lens, um, it's not to sort of say that, oh, we have to be prepared before we can do the thing. But what it does is it almost makes us more prepared to feel capable, even if we're not prepared for a particular thing. Does that make sense? Did that come? It's early here. So I'm like, I know what I'm trying to say, but did
no,
that?
I totally hear what you're saying, Jess. Because again, it's not like we're postponing or like overworking to get to the goal. We're not hustling to get there. But I think, especially in the cadence and the rhythm of a performing career, it is like acting as if you're already living that life and treating yourself like I do this all the time and I teach my clients to approach, working towards their next goal in that way is like, well, how would you be thinking, feeling, being if you were already in the Broadway show, right?
Yeah.
Like how would you already be treating yourself and moving through the world when you are on that contract
Mm,
so that the practices, the baseline, the foundation is there when you're in the experience.
yeah.
But 100%, it's like taking the goal off of the pedestal and like getting out of the cycle of thinking there will be better than here.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, no, no. You get to love yourself, be in the experience of your life now. Because again, to go back to the conversation I was having with my friends, it's like really realizing that our life is happening now. The time, the experience, the joy of life is now. It's always now. Oh my God, I say this to my clients all the time. I'm like, it's just now. All that is now.
Yeah.
And so if we're like getting tight or hustling or overworking to try to get there, we're missing out on the experience of now. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, especially as it's like coming to the end of another year, there's just so much space for the gratitude of the experience that's being had rather than what was achieved, accomplished, etc. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's like, who did I become in the process?
Oh, I love that difference because I think there is a space at the end of the year to make sure that we go back and recognize our achievements and accomplishments because often we forget them. Like we're like, our brain is just like, no, never mind that major thing that you did. Like, all of that.
Mhm.
I love, and I think that puts words to that actually puts words to what I think I already practice anyway. But I love that the lens of, yeah, it's not just about the list of things you accomplished, it's about what was your experience. Because if we miss that, it's no wonder that so many people at this time of year might feel a little despondent, like, or might feel a little down, because they're like, well, I didn't do much. It's like, but what was your experience? Because that is the whole point. Like, what are we doing otherwise if we're not, this is something I talk to my clients about. Like, I use quality of life. Like, if we're not trying to support just a quality of life, even if life is having its ups or its downs, like, if we're not just trying to support our general quality of life, what are we doing? Like,
Mm.
it's, yeah, just looking at that experience and, oh, who was I? Who did I become this year? Or who did I become more of this year? And there's such a, to me, I think that, and it's similar to, how we hold ourselves in things in preparation for things anyway. But I think that builds such more of a sense of a capability,
Mm.
like, and a confidence, um, just by recognizing those things rather than only focusing on the achievements, like the achievement list. There's so much room for it's not enough because, again, human brains. But when we're sort of looking at who was I in the process, to me, like, in my experience with that kind of experience is, oh, I feel more capable to handle whatever might come my way, whether it's planned or not, or wanted or not.
Yeah. Well, and I think that really goes back to like what metric are we using for success
Mm,
and really giving ourselves permission to honor the intangible growth as much as like those tangible, shiny trophies of like this thing or that thing. And it's not good, bad, right, or wrong, but I personally love when clients and myself included, when we're willing to see, oh yeah, that I was in the lowest point of my life, but my relationship to myself in that disappointment was different,
yeah.
right? Like I was willing to love myself and hold myself in the lows, um because I believe that our willingness and our capacity to experience the lows only increases and
Mm,
mirrors our willingness to hold the highs, right?
yeah.
So even that is like, okay, yeah, maybe I had the lowest year of my life, but if the baseline of how I experienced that low was different, if I wasn't shaming myself or making myself wrong or blaming myself, but instead I just nurtured and cared for and was compassionate for myself through that, like, hell yeah, that's a win. Right.
Yeah.
And even just being willing to acknowledge that or witness that, I always think is like a huge metric of success.
Mm, I love that. Like, it feels like something that's way more accessible to people rather than, like, because we're both in the coaching world, like, rather than some of the, like, and this isn't a dig or anything, I can't even think of an example, but I know that in some ways the coaching world is seen as like, it's just all about hustle and, like, and getting the goals and getting the achievements and blah, 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 and what about rest and who we are. And it's this creates a richness, and then the coaching just helps people find their way through and into who they are towards those goals or the vision or the thing that they want to work on, right? Like, it
Mm.
creates richness in the experience that, I don't know, I feel like that means so much more than just the rah rah, I got this goal kind of thing, because it allows for the whole breadth of the human experience, which sometimes we're not enjoying things. And sometimes we're not feeling good, right? Like, it's not about that toxic positivity of, I have to feel a certain way. It's like, well, sometimes I don't. Sometimes
Yeah.
I feel shit. And, like, it I don't know, I think what you're saying, it puts words to giving more permission to people to experience their lives and like, and be in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Definitely.
So, in a way that you are able to, because I know that there would be an element of confidentiality, but you work with, so in the last few years you've been more in the life coaching space of things and you work with performers predominantly, do you want to like, achievement drop any of those experiences you've helped those performers, get
Yeah.
getting at, but I want you to say it.
Yes. Well, so I am a life coach and I work with a lot of creatives and performers because that's been my community. Um, all of my clients are not performers. I do have clients that are coaches and authors and all, like I said, all different types of creative humans. But it's been really fun because I have been supporting performers in having a healthier relationship to auditions and re redefining their relationship to rejection when we're going up against, audition after audition after audition, and how we interpret that no and what we make it mean. And I've been so privileged to support clients to making their Broadway debuts, winning Tony Awards, Grammy Awards. Um, I'm trying to think what else. I have clients that have won Emmy Awards.
Yeah, let's not skip over that for like,
Yeah. Well, and it's like, also a huge part of my work is finding the balance between personal, professional, and financial well-being, right? Especially as artists and creatives. So I've helped artists create multiple six-figure businesses and retire husbands and, have first-time babies while still writing screenplays and fulfilling their creative endeavors. So it's really about stepping into the next iteration of you without thinking that we have to sacrifice our happiness and our pleasure along the way. Right. So I'm really in the season of anything and everything, having it all without thinking we have to be it all and do it all for everyone all of the time. Right. So yeah, it's been really incredible to watch what happens when we shift our inner world, when we upgrade our created identity of who we want to be in the world, and we really start owning our infinite potential, because that's true for everyone, whether you're a Broadway performer or not, right? We all have access to our unique gifts and our experience, as you said in the beginning, our unique experience that shaped us into who we're being, where we can be of service to each other and the world, right?
yeah. Yeah, I love that. Do you think that, and I immediately heard some people listening be like, that's not true because there's nuance, right? But do you think that that a version of creativity is in everyone? Like even if they're an accountant, even if they're, like, do you think that there is, like, I know what I think the answer is, but I'm just curious what your answer is. Like, I'm trying to word it so I'm not leading the witness, but do you
No.
think the version of creativity in everyone in some way, even if they don't identify as creative?
Absolutely. I mean, think about the millions of ways we could style our homes,
Mm,
right? The way
mm,
that we curate our space, our coffee order, I don't know, every single thing, the way we get dressed in the morning, all of that is an extension of creativity, right?
mm,
The kind of music we listen to, the kind of books we read, all of that is an extension of
yeah,
our creative way of being.
yeah,
And well, and I was just going to say that, of course, artists, I think, are at the forefront of that when they're making literal music
mm,
or movies or films or TV shows, like, when they're actively using creative talents, but that doesn't mean we're not creative in solutions or
yes.
creative in banking. I'm sure people are very creative in banking, right?
Yeah,
There's
I'm
so
sure
many
there's a lot of
ways.
creative accountants out there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it just comes down to like, what are you using as the definition or metric of creativity? But I definitely think that's in all of us.
Yeah, and I bring that up because it was something you said that led into that, but I bring that up because it is this reminder, I think, and it sounds like you work with clients on this regardless of what they do, is even if you are not a quote artist, you are creating your life. And I think, and what I see is sometimes there's a disconnect between someone who may not, resonate with the word creativity, which is fine, like, but recognize that there is a creativity inherent, and then how they actually create their lives. It's like, oh, but it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same energy. And if we can just reconnect, like, you don't need to feel creative, or you don't need to be an artist or think you're an art, like, you don't need to, but if you can just reconnect that little wire in recognition for yourself that you are still a creator because you are creating your life, even if you do the most white collar or blue collar, well, I was gonna say like builders are creative, but yeah, if you do like the most white collar work available, there is still a creativity inherent because you are doing that with your life.
100%. 100%. And I just want to like really emphasize this because you said it, is that we are all always creating our lives. And the difference between whether we're doing that consciously or unconsciously gets to be our choice.
Yeah.
But every single thing that we do is a choice point. And there's a million different ways, a million different possibilities that exist. The ones that we choose are the ones that feel the most like us, the ones that most resonate, if we're being conscious about it, right? So just even stepping into knowing that, oh, I want to take a vacation, right? There's infinite possibilities. And the way you step into that, the way you plan it, all of that's creativity,
Yeah.
possibility play, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love this because it just bridges the gap. And like, I love it because I know that we started with so tell us about Broadway. Like, it was very like, oh my God, Broadway, this whole magical world that many of us don't know. Um, but there is a bridge between that gap in experience, just in different ways. Like,
Mm.
I imagine, and I like to believe, and I do believe that um that feeling you had, right, that you said that you had about like on your opening night, where you were looking up and you're like, how is this real? Like, this is my life. I believe that it's accessible to all of us, but in our own way. you know
Yes, absolutely.
I imagine parents have that moment when they're holding their newborn baby, where they're like, oh my God, this is my life. Like, maybe it's a holy shit, but still but like, I think it's this real, you bring this really important reminder of, this is accessible to anyone, and it doesn't require just the stage and the bright lights and the audience in order to, like, to witnessing it in order for it to be true.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and I love this saying that everything is created twice, once in our thoughts and once in the world,
Yeah.
right? And so everything, like I'm looking out my window, everything in the world was an idea before it came to fruition. And I mean, for me, like I remember going to see one of my friends in The King and I remember sitting in the audience feeling and seeing like, ooh, I would love to be in the show. I would love to be on stage, whether it's literally this show or another one, like I'm going to be on a Broadway stage, right? Like
Mm.
that was in my mind and the image of what I wanted to bring into the world. This cup, someone designed this cup to be this thickness and this shape, and it was their idea before it was actually made. And so everything is an idea for all of us. And we just get to, I think, especially to go back to like this end of the year period of reflection and really slowing down to get clear on what was so delicious about this. What did I love? What else do I want to invite in? Like, what would I love to be a part of my life in 2025? That's
Yeah.
been the question that's been like lighting me up, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Like, I think travel is a good way to sort of access that as well. Like, that feeling of I've thought about, like, I'm creating it and then I create it by experience. Like, I had that experience when I was in New York with you. Like, it was, I think I remember saying to you or the group that we were with, like, I remember going, like, it's weird how not weird this feels because it feels so normal, except it's not a normal, like, this is not a normal day for me. This is not a normal week for me, but it feels so normal that that's what feels weird. But it was like, oh yeah, I created this because in different ways, in different iterations of my imagination or visioning, I've had this imagining of I'm going to be in New York at some, like, it was this, oh, I'm going to be there. And the, like, some people call that like a nudge or a calling or a whatever. And it's like, oh no, I just knew. And then eventually when it happened, the surrealness was, oh, it's here, which should feel weird, but it's not weird, which is what feels weird.
Well, I think it's also, oh, go ahead, Jess.
Oh, I was just gonna say it is that you're it's I love that everything is created twice. That was just, well, reiterating that, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. And I think what's so great about creating our lives is that it really just starts with the decision, right? Like the decision of like whether it was an intuition or a knowing, there was a thought that was like, yeah, that's going to happen, deciding that it was going to happen, right?
Mm,
And I think when we look at life, sometimes we unintentionally wait for circumstances or things or people to make that decision for us. But when we're actively creating, we get to decide first, right?
mm,
We get to decide and then allow our reality to be shaped and informed and for things to shift based on the decisions that we've made, right?
yeah.
Because then that's how the baseline of our life is raised because we've decided that we're ready for things to be different.
Yeah, and it's not through doing nothing, like, because the flow on effect from that is because you've decided, maybe how you behave in the world changes or shifts even subtly. How you respond to things changes or shifts even subtly. Like, it's
Yeah.
interesting. And this brings it full circle back to where we started, which was you deciding I'm going to make my Broadway debut this year. Like, it's this whole thing, but how you then approached your life or aspects of your life or your world would have changed, even if not super observable from the outside, but it would have changed, which is what changed the circumstances. That decision in itself wasn't just, I'm going to sit back on my couch and let everything magically happen. It was, oh, it's happening as if by magic, but that's because I'm I'm moving through the world differently.
Yeah. I give this example a lot, but it's like if I'm sitting in a chair, I can say I'm going to stand up. I can decide I'm going to stand up. And I could say, okay, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up. And for those of you who are not watching the video, I am not standing yet. But in order to actually stand, right,
Yeah.
to command my body to stand, there's a certain amount of energy that is required, right?
Mm,
So, in order to do, you can't fake or you can't try standing up. You're either standing up or you're not.
yeah.
And the same thing with manifesting my Broadway debut. It was like, no, I'm deciding I'm going to be on Broadway. So that means I'm getting into ballet class every week, even if I worked a double shift at the restaurant, right? Like I'm committed to these things that I'm doing, and that is informing my energetic output, right? Like you
Mm,
have to actually,
yeah.
it's be in the energy, but it is the energy that's leading to inspired action that is
Mm,
either the same or different from how you've been doing it, right?
yeah.
But to give another example, it's like if I'm going to an audition without an intention, without deciding I would love to book the show, right? I can go through the motion, go to auditions day after day after day. But if I'm not believing that I'm going to book the job or get the job, even maybe in an interview process, the way we show up to that opportunity is different, right? The
Mm,
energy is different when
yeah.
we've decided I'm here and I'm ready and like they want to hire me. It's such a different energy than, all right, I'm coming and I'm going to do the audition, but they're probably not really looking because there's no openings in the show, right?
Like, yeah, it's this whole someone wants to hire me. Someone wants to hire me. So then you show up in that, like, as if
Yes.
someone wants to hire you, even if it's not those people, someone wants to, versus
Yeah.
the question of, well, they're not even. And it changes, yeah, it changes how you move through the world. And I love
Yeah.
seeing the way you move through the world and navigate that because it's so um yeah, it's so inspirational. It's so like, that's really cool. Like, look at it just unfolding and happening. So,
Thanks,
oh,
Jess.
tell tell us all how people can follow you or how they can work with you. Anything you've got coming up that you want to share? Tell us. Share with us.
Yeah. So I'm currently enrolling a mastermind that starts in January called the Anything and Everything Mastermind. It's for really high achieving women that want to be completely free, right?
Mm,
Like free from obligation, free from doing shit you don't want to do, and filling your life with as much pleasure, ease, and allowance as possible. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to my website. It's kelliyoungmanwellness.com. Kelli with an I, Kelli.
we'll add
And
show notes. Yeah, we'll have
yeah,
it there so you can just click. But yeah.
yeah. And then I'm also on Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. Um, but yeah, I'm most excited in the new year to continue welcoming ease into my own life, to manifest my next Broadway show, to get married, to do all the things. There's lots of fun things, right? And I'm super passionate about, yeah, just allowing people to step into the space where they have permission to do anything and everything they want. But
Yeah.
I do still have a performers only container. So if you are watching this and you happen to be a performer, come hang out in Momentum. It's my community for actors, singers, and dancers to love your life in this industry because it can be hard, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Ah, amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for your thank you so much for your time. Well, it's this morning for me, obviously. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for sharing just some of your magic here. I loved this conversation. You know that I could go on all day about this with you for the sake of keeping it to time. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And yeah, I will include those links for people to access and follow if you are interested in working with Kelli or checking out her work or following her or connecting with her. I highly recommend it. But yeah, in the meantime, have a beautiful holiday period and new year. Yeah, I'm excited for 2025.